Hello, I'm Anawultus, and today we are going to be looking at how to make activist pie, Activism Queer Kid Stuff, episode number 36. That's right, we're going to be reviewing an episode of the famous, or some might say infamous show, Queer Kid Stuff, which is a show that is aimed at young children that teaches things about feminism, gender, transgender, and various other things that a lot of people would say children that age may be a bit young to be thinking about. But we'll see what's on the table today. So, quite literally, what's on the table, folks? What's on the table? All right, here we go.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Queer Kid Stuff. I'm Lindsay.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Lindsay. Nice to meet you.
I'm Teddy.
Nice to meet you too, Teddy. I'm sure we're going to have a great time today.
Today, we're talking about activism.
That's right, activism.
Yes, Teddy?
We already know all about activism.
Well, we've definitely talked about activism before, but it's so important that I thought it deserved its very own episode.
So, if we're all part of one big family, then explain to me. Never mind. I'm not going to get into it right yet.
Teddy, we've already talked so much about activism.
Like your favorite book.
Oh yeah, A is for activist. We learned the
Wow, they're actually making children's books about activism. I'm gonna be honest here, and straight out of the gate, my opinion about activism is that generally speaking, if you're not an adult, I don't want you being an activist because there's so much cringe out there of children activists that go out there and they don't know what they're talking about and they end up embarrassing themselves and their families. And that's, of course, is very cringy. Now, of course, if you are some super prodigy genius that knows exactly what he's talking about, and fat chance, man, fat chance you're going to be one of those, then sure, fine. But for the most part, if you're a young child, let's say someone in the demographics target range for this video, you probably shouldn't be an activist. Just saying.
ABCs of activism. And we learned about activism when we talked about the Women's March.
And when we talked about pride and the Stonewall.
Teddy, you're an expert already.
I am an activist expert. An active expert.
We'll work on that one. The Women's March and Stonewall are both examples of one kind of activism. Protest. Protest is a really important part of activism, but there are lots and lots of other ones.
Now, talking about protest, there's of course different kinds of protest, and of course, peaceful protests are in many countries are okay. In some countries, they're not okay, and in some, and of course, I think every country doesn't allow violent protest unless you don't have a government because it's collapsed or something. In which case, activism is probably the least of your concerns, to be honest. But there's also a lot of problems with people that go out and protest, especially if you're trying to protest against someone that actually doesn't have any power to fix what you're trying to do. And so, in my opinion, a lot of protests are not legitimate in the sense that there's no real point to the protest. There's no real achievable goal in the protest than as opposed to more achievable goals in, let's say, other forms of activism such as lobbying, which is much more effective than protesting. Just saying. Regardless of what you think about lobbying, you gotta admit it's more effective than protesting. And other things such as actually trying to talk directly to policymakers, that is probably a more effective form of activism than protesting. Because by protesting, oftentimes you end up making a hostile relationship with the individuals that you need help from in order to achieve your goals, which is counterproductive. And you may say, well, protesting is for the people, and yeah, I guess, but it's not really the best because oftentimes protests descend into either a form of begging of some kind, in which case you're begging people who have power to change things that you don't have power to change. And there's a lot more effective ways to do that than going out on the streets. And, or number two, more severely, protesting can become a form of harassment where you're disrupting people's lives in order to force your opinion down their throats, which, of course, is counterproductive if the person you're doing that to is the person that has power in the situation. And number three, the most extreme type of protest, of course, ends up being forms of terrorism, which in which you then commit violent crimes. And I'm pretty sure that's not what Lindsay here is talking about. I think she's probably talking about the more general kind of protest where people maybe hold signs and they're not hostile, or they're not trying to force their opinions down people's throats, as some people have done in the past. For example, there was one protest where it was gays in San Francisco, and they were yelling out, "We're gonna make your children gay," and all of that stuff. And well, talk about conversion therapy. That's a whole different kind of it, but that's another story.
But we're actually getting a little ahead of ourselves. Teddy, since you are such an expert, do you think you can define activism for us?
Absolutely. You ready, Lindsay?
Ready, Teddy.
Okay. Okay. An activist is someone who takes action to change something they care about.
Did you hear that? I think there was a moment where it was either on the wrong mic or not done correctly, and the voice didn't go through correctly. Interesting enough, that wasn't fixed in editing, but to be honest, I've probably done mistakes like that, so I'm not really the one to say that. Well, I actually just did, so shots fired, I guess.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better than myself. Activism is also super personal. The ways you want to take action and the things you want to take action for are different for everyone. Hey, Teddy, do you
For example, you could call Soviet revolutionaries, or, well, not necessarily Soviet. Let's contextualize this a bit more. How about this anarcho communist revolutionaries, which are entirely different from Soviet revolutionaries, by the way. But let's say anarcho communists who also are explicit anti fascists who go around and advocate for revolutions. In other words, they advocate for the violent overthrow of a government, in which case, in that war, especially in a large country like the US, there may be upwards from 1 million people that die in such a revolution very easily, that it could be that number. That's probably the minimum. In if a violent revolution were to happen in the US, there'd be at least 1 million dead. So they advocate to change the state of the government by killing many thousands of people. And of course, there's entire ethical debates on that, and some people go as far as to say those people should be dropped out of helicopters. But I'm not gonna say that, because you know what, I think that's not a very nice thing to say, now isn't it? And also, That's a very mean thing to do. Don't drop people out of helicopters. If you're going to execute someone, do it by beheading. I think that's a much more humane way. But there you go. That's my opinion on capital punishment. I prefer the guillotine over lethal injection. That's just me. Maybe people are different. That's just me. Maybe I'm a romantic. I don't know. That's probably the weirdest thing in this video. Just hearing my weird opinions about capital punishment. And by the way, I do not believe that communists should be capitally punished just for being communists. Oh, no, I do not want to share this by under any circumstances.
I love apple pie.
Ooh, apple pie, very, very good taste there, Teddy. I can sure say that I do appreciate an apple pie. There's different kinds of apple pies. You could have an apple pie where the apples are chopped up very finely, very smoothly, or you could have apples that are chunky, or how about slices of apples? There you go. There's one. Or if you really want to go full texture, full hard texture, just half cored apples. By that I mean you core an apple, then you cut what's left in half, and then you put it in the pie. So that's going full texture there. Or you could go in an entirely different direction, get some apple jam, or apple preserves, something like that. You know, make a nice crostata, you know, Italian style, or just go whatever way. There's a million different ways. Well, maybe not a million, but 100 different ways to make apple pies, and I do appreciate very many of them. That's a question that I would like answered as well. Thank you very much.
That is an excellent question, Teddy. Being a good activist is sort of like baking pie.
You what, mate?
First,
That's some magic editing tricks there. Oh, I just noticed the queer mug has I presume that's a fake eggplant in there. Talk about getting memes there. That's a fresh meme right there. Pretty dank.
you need to make the pie crust, and that takes a couple of ingredients. The first ingredient is privilege.
Of course, why privilege? Why does it have to be privilege? I don't want privilege in my apple pie. Come on. Have some sense of flavor, okay? Just why?
Remember when we talked about privilege, Teddy?
Yeah, you and Allie sang a song about the monkey box.
You have such a good memory, Teddy. Exactly. So understanding privilege, that's our first ingredient. If you don't remember what privilege is, you can rewatch our video on privilege or sing along to our privilege song, then come right back here.
What's the next ingredient?
Well, the one problem with this is, what if you're an activist for let's say free market capitalism, where privilege doesn't matter, or an activist for meritocracy, where privilege doesn't matter, and what if you're just a free speech activism where you say, well, sure, people can give each other privilege, but we're not going to forbid people from giving each other privilege, but we're also not going to allow people to inhibit each other's rights. What if that's your opinion? What if you're an activist for those things, eh? Eh, Lindsay? What about that? What if you believe that many of these different forms of privilege are actually myths made by people who are trying to change society for the better? However, their definition of what is better for society is very different from, let's say, my definition for what's better for society. But let's move on. Okay, the first time I saw this video once before just to make sure I had stuff to talk about. But intersectionality, it just jumped out at me. I mean, I should have expected it since the first one was privilege, but then suddenly intersectionality. I almost, I almost laughed myself to death there when that happened. But honestly, why?
Oh, 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 I remember. It's about all the parts of identity.
Exactly. So practicing intersectionality and remembering that all the parts of our identity together have to do with our privilege is the second ingredient. You can rewatch that episode too if you need to jog your memory.
What if your idea of achieving equality is one where individuals' identities don't matter, where you can be white or black and be treated equally because we're not going to hold what your ancestors did against you, because we honestly, you're not culpable for what your ancestors did, let's be honest. And we're not going to hold microaggressions against anyone, because are you seriously going to get upset because somebody, let's say, let me think of what a microaggression would be. Somebody rolled their eyes at you, and you think that's because they disrespect your race, even though there's no real confirmation for that. And therefore you consider that to be a microaggression. Are you really going to allow those things to govern your life? Are you really going to allow your skin color to tell you what you should and shouldn't do in life? Are you going to allow these things to control you, your identity to control you? And that's the problem that I have with intersectionality. The problem with intersectionality is that it puts people into a box here, a box there, a box everywhere, and and it ends up that these people are trying not to be racist, they're trying not to be sexist, but in being intersectional and having this idea of intersectionality, their viewpoint has to inherently make judgments about race, about sex, about gender, about sexual orientation, about social class, about all these things that other people might say, oh, why don't we have equal rights everywhere? And why don't we all treat each other equally? But no, that's not the way the intersectionals do it. They don't want equality. Because by doing this intersectionality, you end up putting people in boxes. And when you say that certain people that are in certain boxes are more culpable for certain things than others, not because of individual actions, but because of being in that box, doesn't that make you a racist or a sexist or a classist? And you may say, well, if it's a minority against someone who has institutional power, then it's not racist. Says who? The intersectional people, because they believe that race and class have an intersection. When obviously speaking, there are people from all different classes of all different races. Look at Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, individuals who have secured significant amounts of wealth and influence within their lifetimes and who are of ethnic minorities. And it all comes back to the idea that if you're going to say that racism has to do with institutional power, then you are immediately discarding actual racism for race classism, which is different. Race classism is a, by the way, that's a term I made up. And the reason I made it up is because it's a much more accurate word for that definition than racism is. Race classism is when you believe that there are different classes for different races, and that because of that, the, let's say, upper classes discriminate against the lower classes. That's what race classism would be. And that's what I disagree with. I say that that's not what racism is, because by establishing this idea that your status in life determines whether or not you are capable of, let's say, bigotry, then you're saying that certain individuals doing taking the same action are more likely to be wrong than other individuals. Isn't that the same thing as an accusation that they make against policemen? The accusation where they say that policemen let, let's say, whites get away with more than they allow blacks to get away with? Isn't that same accusation? But you turn it around. They allow individuals who are of lower class or who are of minorities to get away with more than they allow whites to get away with, white men to get away with, white upper class men to get away with. Isn't that the same thing? It's just two different ways around. And of course, all of this doesn't make sense either, because there are mixes of various ethnic groups. So, especially in the United States, there's a lot of diversity where there's people who are ethnically mixed between East Asian and European, or coming from Africa and European, and then people who are coming from Africa, who are of African descent but not descended from slaves, like Obama, who is whose mother was, of course, as they would say, white, and his father was from Kenya. So there's all sorts of these different combinations, and intersectionality requires you to take all these different combinations and to make a, let's say, a 7-dimensional grid where everybody has a different point at each dimension, and then you can calculate how oppressed you are. And why? Why do that? Isn't it easier to treat people equally? Isn't it easier to just drop this pretense? Well, maybe that's just my opinion.
The next ingredient is actually a couple ingredients together that we're going to add separately, because that's all about being a good ally.
Yeah, that's right. If you're not an activist, you better be an ally.
And there are 3 parts to being a good ally.
Yep, they're remembering to respect other people.
And you know what? I agree with that. I think respect is very important. I'm going to respect all of my allies and all of my opponents. Why? Well, I've got religious reasons to. Of course. Whatever reason would there be? No. There are other reasons, but I do it for religious reasons. But I do think it's important to respect people, especially if you're having an interchange of ideas and a debate, because that allows for a more safe environment for the exchange of knowledge and the exchange of opinions. Because if there's disrespect, then you're going to get a bunch of ad hominems and just a bunch of low-hanging fruit debates. And unfortunately, I've seen quite a lot of those happen, where one side is trying to make a serious argument, and the other side is just being flippant about the whole thing. It's just a terrible debate, and it doesn't help the audience, it doesn't help the debaters, and it just makes the people who are being flippant look dumb. So do have respect, okay? Do have respect.
Listen to other people and learn from other people. You can rewatch that one too if you need to.
And I think that's good. It's important to listen and learn so that you can understand. But then, after that, you have to think about it. And you have to think, is this a realistic idea? Is this something that's going to make the lives of people easier or harder? is this something that would require me to surrender the moral high ground? Is this something that potentially could hurt a lot of people? Is this something that is necessary? And these are all questions to ask. And other questions is could be maybe what are the underlying reasons that we are doing these things? Why are we doing these things? Or how could these goals be accomplished? And those are all the and another one is how would outsiders perceive what we are doing? And those are all relevant questions to ask. And if you ask these questions and it turns out that you disagree, then it's very important to maybe offer a counter argument explaining why you disagree in a very civilized and respectful manner so that the other side has to respect and listen and learn. And that's how a good debate is done. When one side speaks, the other side is listening and respecting and learning, and then the other side speaks, and at the end of it all, they may still disagree, but at least there was an exchange of ideas. The ideas were engaging each other, and anyone who was in the audience may understand the subject at hand better. And that's how debates should be. And unfortunately, that's not how a lot of debates are. And I think that's a very big problem. But that's a real big tangent I went on about debates. But here we go.
Well, all it takes is practice, Teddy.
And I do have to say, the way you whisk those eggs, yeah, I think that was pretty good. I'm not the expert gourmet egg whisker. I mean, I'm gourmet in a lot of other ways, but just saying.
So now we have to mix it all together and roll it out into a pretty pie crust, and there you go.
Ooh, hand mixing, man. Getting off your horse, getting off your high horse, getting in with those hands, mixing it in there. That's a bold move. Now, I personally, I'm someone who doesn't like to make a mess. I like to use tools. You know, oh, maybe I'm privileged. Maybe that makes me privileged. Maybe it's because I'm privileged. I don't know. I like to use tools. You like to use your hands. Whatever floats your boat. Whatever bakes your pie. And as long as the pie turns out well, and as long as you wash your hands beforehand, so that you don't get horrible pathogens into the dough, that's great. So we'll see what happens here. Wait, wait a second, just a second. I need to go back a couple seconds. No, 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 no.
So now we have to mix it all
I think
together.
I saw something. We'll see if the Illuminati is confirmed. Ah, I missed it. Just gotta go back a couple frames. Come on. There it is. You see this? You see this? The edge of a crust. There's. Is that. It's hard to tell. Because of a shade here. Is that. Okay, okay. Illuminati is not confirmed. Not confirmed today. For a moment, because of a shade that the crust was laying, I thought there was a second crust underneath the first crust, and I thought they took a pre-made crust and then they put another crust into it, which would be pretty weird. But no, there's no second crust. So Illuminati is not confirmed today, unfortunately. Maybe yesterday, maybe tomorrow, but not today.
What is it, Teddy?
It's just a crust. It's not a pie yet. It needs its inside.
Very insightful, very incisive commentary. Great observation, Teddy. I'm right on the same page.
Well, that's where you come in.
I'm the filling.
Oh, no.
Oh, oh, well, we we talk about respect, but there are some things that even we, in our intersectionality, do not respect.
No, 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 Teddy. The filling is all about you and your activism. It's about how you want to make change
What if you are a status quo activist? Oh my goodness. Um, what if you are a status quo activist? I mean, you're afraid that some activists are going to change things to the worse, and because of that, you go out there and you tell people that what you've got right now is better than what they're trying to change it to, and that's a status quo activist. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of those people, but that's generally not the kind of people that would go out being activists. But I mean, even Tea Party people, they're not status quo. They're more, we have to go back to our constitutional roots so that all of our civil rights are respected. That's the Tea Party people. Uh, but yeah, status quo activism. Maybe I should write that down in the big journal of things to do. I don't know. Status quo warrior. That's what they're gonna call me from now on. I'm not a status quo warrior. There's some things that are pretty dumb going on right now that I'd like to change. So yeah, before anyone thinks I'm a status quo warrior, let me just say that no, I'm not.
Like LGBTQ plus?
I don't know. That doesn't sound very fruity to. Oh, or maybe it does sound fruity. Ooh. Maybe you're onto something, Teddy. Maybe you're onto something, Teddy.
Exactly right, Teddy. LGBTQ plus stuff is definitely in my pie and YouTube videos.
Oh yeah, get some spicy memes in there. You know, make it a jalapeno pie, if you know what I'm saying. Get those jalapenos in there. Get those. Yeah, make it quite dank. 420. Oh, that's an ingredient. Get some marijuana in there. Actually, no, I wouldn't put marijuana in my pie. Um, I'm quite fond of my fertility, so I'm not going to put marijuana in my food. Well, it wouldn't ruin the. That's what the studies say about marijuana, that it affects the sperm and the egg cells. Now, of course, being one who is by nature engendered masculine, trying to use the word gender as correctly as possible, um, I have to say that it wouldn't permanently ruin my fertility, but it certainly would increase the chance of having mutated offspring. While if I were a woman, though, it could potentially permanently ruin some egg cells and potentially, if not ruin some of them, cause mutagenic effects on others. So yeah, I'm I'm not a 420 Blaze It guy. It's got to be said that I do some research on weed, and generally speaking, I don't think it's healthy. So that's just my opinion. If you don't like it, well, what am I gonna do about it? What am I gonna do about it? What am I gonna do? I'm gonna shoot you? No, I'm not going to do that because I respect you. I respect you. I respect your opinion, but I disagree, and I think that maybe there's a debate to be had, but maybe I'm not the person to debate it. Maybe you should get an actual person that has done the research itself to debate it, because I've just looked at academic papers and stuff like that, which is a lot different from doing the research yourself, from being in the lab. You know what I'm saying?
That's one way I like to be an activist for these videos.
So I could put protest
And being an activist to young children is, of course, highly controversial, but is it really that effective if young children learn these things? Oh my goodness. And of course the other side, you know what the other side's going to say. The other side's going to say that you're indoctrinating the young children into believing all sorts of lies and hocus pocus at a very early age. That's what the other side's going to say. So maybe we can see some counter activism start up there. Get some Sargon of Akkad, you know what I'm saying?
in my palm.
Now that's an individual of taste. That's right. Get some chocolate in that pie. Now, as an expert pieman myself, um, I like to do something called a cake pie. So here's what you do. This now listen closely. This is very important. Take a pie crust, okay? Maybe a handmade one or a pre-made one, depending on how you want to go. And now get some pie batter. You can either make it yourself or get a mix. Not pie batter, cake batter. Make it yourself or get a cake mix, and then pour it into the pie crust. You see where I'm going? And then you can maybe uh, put some fruit on it. I mean, here's what you can do: you can take some yellow cake batter, and you get your pie crust, and you put some cherries and some pineapple rings on the bottom. You put the batter in, then you put some more cherries and pineapple rings on top, and you've got almost a pineapple upside down cake, except it's a pie. Or you can go a different way and put chocolate on it. Put bananas in it. See, that's what Anamultos, the expert gourmet, has taught the world today. Get those cake pies rolling. So a lot of people like them. Honestly, I've shared them with people, and I always get some positive responses.
Look at that. We've got our very first activist pie, Teddy.
I want a slice of that pie, if you know what I'm saying. Look at that. That's well, I don't know. Whew. I'm looking at it, and um, yeah, actually, yeah, I'd take a slice of that pie. I'd go for it. It looks like it would be tasty, and as a man of good taste, I do like to have a good taste from time to time. You know what? Maybe I should convert my channel into a food review channel. Go fully Joey's World Tour or something like that. Something edgy like that, and just review food. Go to McDonald's. Don't stop McWhining. there's a line, and review some food. Maybe I should do that. 1,000 likes, and I'll do a face cam reveal food review. Legit, I'm not kidding. 1,000 likes, and I'll do a. Actually, no, 1,000 likes on this video. Or no, 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 no. Let's change it up. If I get 1,000 likes on any video, and I also have 1,000 subscribers, so that my channel can get monetized again, because I've got enough watch time to be monetized, but I don't have enough subscribers. If I get 1,000 subs and 1,000 likes on any video, I will do a face reveal food review. That's an Ana Wultos promise. You can take that to the bank. You can take that to the Federal Reserve Bank, and they'll accept it as legal tender. Don't tell them I said that. I'd get sued. It's not actually legal tender. Just a disclaimer there. But let's go farther.
Digging.
Yum!
Oh, actually, Teddy,
There's some nice filling in there. That looks like it's something rich. Something fruity, if you know what I'm saying. Maybe there's some chocolate in there. Mwah! Delicioso.
last thing we need to remember about our activist pies. However, I've had a lot of practice making activist pies, but they don't always turn out perfect like this.
And the screen starts shaking. I think deep down somewhere in the internet there's an activist triggered that not all activist activities end up going well, and that some actually end up looking pretty dumb, or end in accidents, or end in government crackdowns.
Being an activist is kind of hard, and we don't always get it right, especially when we're first starting. But all it takes is a little bit of practice and some recipe tweaking, and you'll be making your very own activist pies very soon.
Wow!
Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching Queer Kid Stuff. We have brand new episodes this season coming every other Wednesday.
Queer kid stuff, radicalizing young children into being activists. There you go. No, I'm joking. They're not radicalizing them, but honestly, intersectionality and privilege, really? You, the cringe is too much.
Don't forget to subscribe, like the Facebook page, and
But not as much as the cringe of people watching my video responding to this video, eh? Yeah, I know how it is. All right. So I think that's where I'll hold it. And look at that, the video has gone 40 minutes, which is about 10 times longer than the original video, which is a good, well, not 10 times longer, more like 8 times longer. But that's a good thing, actually, because that means that nobody can accuse me of not making it transformative if it's 40 minutes long on a 5-minute video. So anyway, thank you all for watching, and I'll be seeing you all next time on Awiltus over and out, and please do send suggestions for video ideas. Thank you.